All right, cyber traders, welcome on back here for another fantastic edition of our Traders Talk Workshop this Monday afternoon, shortly after noontime Eastern. Great to see all of our students and members alike. Got Roger, Philip, got Sam, got Irving, got Barbara, Grant, Margaret, Laureen, Chuck, got Chris. Got a full house here actually hosted inside our live trading room. If you're on social media, always look to follow us there at Cyber Trading U, popping up on the lower left eventually here. I'm actually a little remote today, working out of my parents' place, visiting the old rents up in New York, and been living in Florida the last 2.5 years. So I'm taking some time right now, family time. So got a face for radio, but otherwise I'm like cramped up a little bit. So if you're on social media, don't have the webcam showing today, I'll save you my face there. But otherwise, at Cyber Trading U on the lower left right there. Then otherwise, if you're interested in joining our live trading room, we'll have that popping up on the top left right there as well, the QR code. But I'll tell you what, wow, we've had a great morning already, great afternoon thus far. A couple stocks still holding where they should be. Now, with this, though, normally, out of like a count of 100, probably if you were to say that PLTR joined the S&P 500 and they popped on Friday after hours, I would say that 99 out of 100 times you'd see me trade PLTR all throughout the day today. And we're going to cover PLTR. They made a phenomenal move. There was plenty to take on PLTR. And like I said, like 99 out of 100 days, you'd be seeing me like just jump in and jump out, tell you, oh, I'm in on this trade from so and so price. Well, I guess today was that 1 out of 100, huh? Because today, this morning, there was a stock that caught my, interest that much more. The Summit trade, SMMT. So really brief. I mean, I'm kind of asking more of our, regular students at this point, not even to say longtime students, but if you're familiar with SMMT in the chat, just give me a little, chat back right there, like Jeff or Grant, Roger, Leda, Kathleen, Barbara. Have you seen this stock trade before? Have you seen us call out this SMMT in the past? Because definitely not our first rodeo on the stock. Actually, in hindsight, seemingly has been a great swing trade, but otherwise, we traded the volatility. We traded these pops back at the end of 2022, over time. Here, little slingshot back up here. So on days where there's news that's come out, we've day traded it. We never really thought to swing trade it, just to be honest with you, because it was kind of a lower float stock. It still is a low float stock, and we didn't really have as much interest on it as a swing as we just thought as a day. Hey, maybe day over day, if there's action on it, we'll try and refocus on it. Right? That was always kind of the MO with any of these small cap pharma therapeutic based companies. Well, all of a sudden this morning, news came out with SMMT, and we'll show you the headline. We'll get to the news in just a bit. But point being, right now, obviously, and from earlier, this stock was approaching all-time highs and broke all-time highs earlier today. Right, all-time high was like roughly 1975, like this like peak back from 2016 even. So I remember the stock back when it was like a $1, $2 stock, and it came off of some stupid like phase one pharmaceutical drug news, and it dumped right back down. It's one of those pump and dump type of stocks there. Well, hey, I mean, we never really thought it would try and make this squeeze up all the way up to break all-time highs today. So yeah, today's that 1 out of 100 where normally I would have been a lot more drawn to trade Palantir, just coming off the S&P 500 edition. They're still running up right now. Likely going to see $35 on this trade later on today or later on this week, we'll call it. But, with that there, though, I want to just focus on Summit first. Then we're going to jump to Palantir. Then we're going to do Palantir. Then we'll do, there were a few other trades that ended up running from before, right? APLD, coming off the NVIDIA partnership. This thing's still going. There's plenty to take off the table today. Just as we'll begin on Summit, I'll tell you. I mean, this was probably the most volatile of them all. But this is where I'll say we don't need to be perfect with our exit as long as we're as prepared and as pristine as we could be with the entry, right? We're not trying to, take all the meat off the bone. We're just trying to take enough off the bone to satisfy us here at the end of our meal. So that's where I say it always just goes back to the entry. So this had a pop pre-market, moved up, pulled back. This is all before I was able to trade at 8 o'clock in the morning. And honestly, for a Monday, I have no business trading in pre-market unless if it's like a really good liquid stock. That's where Palantir, frankly, was a pretty good pre-market trade to consider. It didn't just make that big pop though until 9:30. It was a little bounce. This stock has the type of liquidity that you'd want to trade if it was pre-market. So I didn't really have much business on Summit for that reason in pre-market, but I'll tell you, just before we get into this move, for any of our students here, Lynn and Randy, Sam, Gillis, Laureen, Barbara, if you had missed out on this move after the open, it's on our watch list, it was on our pre-market list, it was on the main list. We had great reason with following it going into the morning. If you didn't jump in when you could have at first, that's okay. I mean, easy to say, there was plenty of other opportunities to take as it ran up. But otherwise, though, and we'll go through the motions, but hey, there's other trades to follow as well. This was fast. This was a category five stock as we, look to kind of sort these stocks by volatility. Think of it like a hurricane. Like Cat 1 isn't, too crazy. Obviously, in nature it is, but, not compared to a Cat 5. A category five. This is a category five stock. It was trading about 30 to 40 cents a minute each bar on average, about 30 to 40 cents per bar. So if you missed it, it's understandable. It's like, stepping up to the plate and looking to try and swing at a 110-mile-per-hour fastball, and you haven't swung a bat in years. So, it's a very similar concept. But let's actually break this down in full, at least. The news that came out on Summit to begin. We'll break open the old Benzinga Pro for this one. I might need to even refresh here. Give me a second. It's going to Fine folks at Benzinga are great. Benzinga Pro platform altogether. So let's see what we got here. News came out on Summit in relation to their drug about lung cancer, right? This is it. Summit Therapeutic shares trading higher after the company announced its lung cancer candidate has surpassed Merck's multi-billion-dollar Keytruda drug, cutting the risk of disease or death by half. So if you know Merck, they're a huge, obviously, pharmaceutical company. Their lung cancer drug, I'm sure successful and doing well, but clearly summits have shown that it can do better, right? It can, be that much stronger compared to Merck's, who's a multi-billion-dollar company, let alone this drug to begin with is a multi-billion-dollar drug. So that news that came out, hey, led to a great reaction in the morning. Wait, what did we say that all-time high was? If we go back on the monthly chart there, what was that all-time high? Back from 2016? If you look in the fine print there in the data box, 1975 says open, high, low, close there. It says 1975 there in green. Well, as I take a sip of my water, and let's try and plot this, stock out here. Let's try and line this chart up as far as where we might be able to find the clear levels of support resistance. So I'm just going to draw one line here for now, that 1975 or whatnot. 1972, 1975 there. I mean, clearly it ran right up there, got close, broke over it a little bit, a little false break, a little head fake there, and it came back down. So strong rejection off the all-time high in pre-market hours. That was well before 8 o'clock even. But this is where I'll ask our students this. You know where I'm going if you're Leda or Barbara, Grant, Samuel, or any of our students that have been with us routinely month over month. For a more volatile stock, for something that isn't, we'll say, inexpensive. This isn't too expensive, obviously, but it's not like a dollar stock anymore. For something that's really fast moving and, it's like a $15, $20 stock or so, what set of levels would we more often find the icebergs at? This isn't like a dirt cheap stock, but, what common set of price levels would you more so look to focus on for this type of trade? You're just looking at the volatility, how fast it's moving and how fast it's popping up and down. A lot of us here saying 50-cent levels and dollar levels, and I don't know if anyone else kind of answering later on is kind of playing follow the leader there. This is where I'll jump ahead and say, I'm not focused every 50 pennies here, folks. I'm focused every $1. I was hinting to it. I'm saying this is not a dirt cheap stock, right? That's where I was saying, like, maybe for something dirt cheap, that's where you could think like, every 50 pennies. Something like this, and I took the time to do it already. I had this planned out going into Trader Stock. I already put the levels up. These were the levels I plotted this morning on Summit, and I'll move my cursor a little bit easier on the eyes there. Practically, every $1 has been a level, right? I mean, quite literally, almost every level here line is at the dollar level. So I just want you to know that if it was like a cheap stock, like dollar or $5 stock, yeah, you're talking every 50 pennies. But this is moving around quite frankly, like a category five stock all throughout pre-market hours. You knew this was category 5 just with how fast it was popping here. Went from 18 up to 1950 within, 13 minutes time. That's pretty damn fast. And then obviously the drop here too, just seeing how far it crashed back down, but let alone from 18 down to 16, a 2 point drop in what, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So this is being like a category 5 stock. I'd more so focus every dollar, and that's probably going to find you a better level to work with. Now, if you just focus on the dollar levels anyway for any stock, especially the cheaper stocks, you'll be that much stronger with your conviction. But, cheaper stocks every 50 pennies there, more like a $15, $20 stock and above. You go every dollar. Then, like the more expensive stocks, every $5, and so on and so forth. So, we'll engage more in that conversation in the phase 2 class that we have coming up in a few weeks. Phase 2 stock course that I teach, more of our intermediate based class. But you could just see held underneath 17 here for a little bit. Hint, hint, I'll just get to it right now. I jumped in as it was shaking around 17 at first. I did this on small size to begin, but as it was shaking back up here, I thought there was the chance for a rebreak. So I added more as it ended up beginning to pop back up. So my average price on my first entry on this trade, 1712, 1711, just from like, I jumped in at first on 100 shares even here, and it pulled back. So I wasn't really up to begin on the first part of my position. But the more it was holding under 17 and not dropping, I thought there was a better chance for it to re-break, and that's where I ended up adding more to my position. But still, though, this was a category 5 stock. I didn't do this on 1,000 shares, guys. I did this on 500 shares in total, maybe for slower moving $17 stocks. I'd have more confidence and faith to do a full size position. I say this to you because you don't need to do a full size position to make money on this trade. Even doing this on 100 shares, if you walk away with a $2 per share win, that's a solid day. That's a solid pay on one trade, we'll say at least. Some people's daily targets, that's enough to pay for, a couple dinners there with the family. That's some real bills. So you don't even need to, do it on large size or, half size to, make actual money here in this trade. But that's where I ended up taking my position when it was like nipping at 17 here. I was trying to take it off like this initial bar. It broke under 17 at first, and I just saw it break. I'm like, maybe we'll see it kind of just drop off more down to 16 again. It didn't. It pulled back up. So I tried to take the beginning parts of my trade here, and then obviously over time it ran better. But this is where I'll even say from pre market, well, look what was happening in pre market hours. Yeah, you could say it broke under it after a little while, but the whole concept for what we look for is seeing buying pressure, right? So if you think about every time it's nipping over 17, over 17, over 17 here, we're seeing buying. That's early in the morning, obviously, but that's what we look for to make stronger conviction later on here. So that includes here. It smashed under it as support. You'd figure it should be support here, at this point. It's not, and it holds under it as resistance and drops more. But even these little holds under resistance here, it's nipping it. Like even here, 8 o'clock move, little spike up. For every instance in which it's like nipping over resistance, we're seeing more and more buying pressure. So if it's not gonna like tank, then I'd figure there's more of a shot of this flipping into its natural support, or at least for a pop up otherwise. So I was looking for this break over 17 to flip into support at 17. And I just didn't get the support hold at first. I was trying to see the break over it again. That's basically where I was getting to. I have other levels here too, little chart level here that never got touched at 1420 ish. That was just from the chart otherwise. That never you know, basically got tested as support after. This was a strong volume level. So I was thinking about it as 16 if it were to drop more, just didn't. So that over time became a little relevant. And now at this stage, once it ended up popping for me and is moving up a little bit, then it's the same game. It's literally the same game at 18 and at 19 and at 20 and at 21, maybe later on today, as it was for me at 17. It's the same exact concept. The more buying pressure that you have off of these levels, you should have more conviction about not just the big move shortly after, but the flippening of that resistance into a support. Like at 19 bucks, it stabbed over it here, broke over it here. And, for the times it's doing that, It's either going to head fake and crash or it's going to fly. And obviously, with the way it's trending, you're looking for it to run. So it broke over at nice. It touched the all time high, 1975. I mean, long term charting, all time high. I know it nipped above it here a bit, but I'm talking like regular hours. But it ended up kind of pulling back a bit. This is where it flipped. 19 became support. It popped above the next set of levels here at 1975 and at 20. And the same thing happened. I mean, again, 19 came back down as support. We need to see 20 act as support now. The more times it nipped it, recently here, I'd feel stronger about it here heading into the next 30 minutes, hour. And if it doesn't, if this fails and it comes right back down again, the volume's winning down a bit, should that be the case, then I'm backing on this position here from 1929, 1930 price. I'll even show that entry in just a bit, explain why I took that trade. And at least for now, it's doing good, but I have my stop set. If it breaks below 1964 here, 1965, I'm going to get stopped out. So we'll see if that ends up happening or not. But you always got to have your seatbelt on for any trade. This or even from earlier. Obviously, we'll get into Palantir next, but let's actually show you something here additional. So we focus on volume. That's our whole MO here at Cyber Trading University. That's where I was asking students like Barbara and Kevin, and I see other people here too. I see Steve and Doug and Michael and Michelle. I see a bunch of us here joining, but this is where I'll say otherwise. Hey, you look at icebergs, every dollar level, right? Okay, well, we don't really look at indicators too much. We really don't have enough time to, play around with something that's more lagging. So that's where I say normally I don't do this. But for as much as this just completely took off and popped without very little retracement, hint, hint, there's an indicator that I used to identify where we might have other levels of support. And I use the fib retracement here, basically going from this pre-market like base, it's pretty good right before the open, to this top. And that is where I'll show you my entry here because it pulled back down towards this line, one of the stronger fib levels here altogether, the 38.2. It was more on this entry here as it pulled back under and over. I jumped in. So Laureen, I think, is in this trade right now with me right now live from 1940. I think, Laureen, your entry is, she's one of our students in our trading room joining us right now. She says, yes, there we go. Love it. All right. So, you know what? Just we play it level by level, right? Much like we'll go into APLD next. We'll do Palantir, obviously, coming up. It's the same game, especially for something that's trending well like this. If it wasn't providing this trend, even from earlier, of it making that little nip over the last little peak here and then the same here, then the likelihood of us getting stopped out increases, right? So not every stock will play so nice. All right. So actually, really quick, this will be a good segue because Lynn and Randy, I was speaking to some of our new gold students here at CTU, and they said lots of early news on SMMT pre-market on Benzinga, right? And we talked about that just a moment ago. We showed that headline right from Benzinga here, right? But this is where I was going to say. So I spoke to Lynn and Randy earlier, couple that is joining CTU, and they are big into what we do, and they're looking to really excel. And they had a bit of faith, kind of with their we'll just say background and just experience, or just kind of seeing that drug. What was it, Keytruda on commercials? They just saw how big it is, and well, shoot, if that headline is saying that this drug is expected to perform that much better than Keytruda's multi-billion-dollar, then they were confident just with that, like kind of mental math, basically 1 + 1 = 2, that SMMT should pop. Now, they just joined us, brand new students here of CTU. So, over time, you will gain the confidence with, following certain steps behind taking an entry. But that's where I kind of jump back before I go too far ahead. I'll say, like, really, we teach this all throughout our curriculum, but you have to be process oriented. For those that aren't, and you're just more focused on the goal at hand, you're going to be more overwhelmed trying to follow the process without looking at the steps involved. Everyone gets overwhelmed at first, but the more that you do follow the process and the steps involved within it, it becomes more fluid. All right, so that's just perhaps easy to say here, but Lynn and Randy were confident based on the headline, right? And it worked out. All right, well, not every headline you should have 100% confidence in, and they know that. I'm bringing this up to everyone else. Up, just got stopped out. Just got stopped out of my trade. Made money on it, but I got taken out. That's all right. listen, if it's not going to play nice by us, then the probability of this pulling back much more increases. So I'd rather take the money and run, and then realign myself for a new entry if if it does pull back, or if it does shake me out here and snaps back up. Yeah, we'll try and focus on it later. But money's money for a Monday morning. So that's where I'll just kind of jump back and I'll say, not every headline you want to just have that much confidence in, even if it sounds great. Obviously, this one, it sounded great and it worked out great. Well, there's something very similar to this that actually did play out very well. It was the APLD, right? Good segue now, because this is obviously running again. I say again because we traded the stock last week, right? We traded the stock like last week. It was off the partnership news with Nvidia. We had a nice pop in pre-market this morning. On Thursday, it was ran up, built a nice Fausto flag, and it was very chippy, but eventually broke over that top and moved up a little bit. But made a nice run for what it was worth. And that's kind of similar where, in this case, like APLD, the news that came out with them was like partnering up with Nvidia, right? Let's see from Thursday. Yep, here we go. Applied Digital trading higher after the company entered agreements for a $160 million private placement financing priced at market, accredited investors, including NVIDIA, right? So NVIDIA basically taking some sort of stake in the company, totaling out to 160 million. Hey, generally speaking, that headline sounds great. So, for a smaller cap company like, APLD, you'd figure it should run. Well, on Thursday, it did. It made a good move. I felt confident with taking this trade because of that headline. At the end of the day, you still need to plot your levels out and know, where the key icebergs are more than anything. But once you do that, that's where you kind of add that mental math together. 1 + 1 = 2. I mean, shoot, for every time news came out that was good and sounded great, if we were able to take the perfect trade at the perfect time at the perfect price, you and I wouldn't be on a YouTube stream, right? And you and I wouldn't be in the trading room, right? Unless it was all just to be friends. Otherwise, like, there'd be no point in education if trading was that easy, right? Eh, I wish it was, but that's not always the case. So every trade begins with an entry. Every entry begins with a big level. Well, you know what? Every entry does begin with belief and seeing good news that comes out. So with the news that comes out, you say, okay, where are my levels? And thankfully for this, it took a little bit, but it played nicer and broke out later on. And then obviously Friday, it kind of dipped off a bit, didn't do much. But, because of Thursday's move, how could we not try and focus in on this trade if it starts to pop back up? So, that's kind of what we're doing here. We're working together as a team, especially inside our live trading room each and every day. Obviously, we always say start and stick with our watch list here. The SMMT was great, Palantir was great, BLMZ was okay for a little bit at first. SINT was more pre-market, but otherwise, though, Rich, myself, Fausto, obviously, him above all, we're making call outs in our chat board too. So, it was at like 9:48 in the morning. My colleague here, Rich, he had called out APLD holding under 5. That was the first chat on APLD all throughout the morning, but it was at 9:48. Hmm. Really quick question, folks. Again, we go through the same motions here in Traders Talk, our workshop, each and every Monday now afternoon. But what time is reversal time normally? What time is reversal time normally? 10:15, 10:30. I know it broke higher later on, but that's kind of odd, right? Wow, like almost right before 10:30, this thing just kind of peaked, pulled back. Well, wait a second, hold on. Let's go back to SMMT then, right? I mean, it can't be that easy, right? Can't be that easy, right? SMMT reversal right at 10:30? Come on. That's where I say, obviously, you can't expect that literally on every single stock if it was that freaking easy, right? But it is pretty funny how it played out coincidentally there on both the APLD today and SMMT today, where they basically topped off at first at 10:30 in the morning. Now, though, here, though, obviously pulled back, moved up more. Let's go over the same motions, though, on this, on APLD, because it had popped at 9:48 in the morning. Richard called it out underneath 5. It was holding under 5. Uh, again, much like we just said, especially for a cheaper stock, I'd be more inclined to focus on every 50 cents. So 5, 550, $6. Later on, 650 if it can get that far. So it tested 5, pop and drop. Had some good buying pressure at first at the time of the break. So the more times that we see buying here in the smaller area, no surprise that this ran well. It broke out over 5 again at 9:51 in the morning. Reversal time not until 10:15, 10:30. Even if you undercut that time and say it's at 10:15, not at 10:30, well, again, let's do a little math. If you're expecting the top to be at 10:15 in the morning, not 10:30, but this pops at 9:52, how much time do we really have before it can possibly begin to reverse? Well, we got about like 22 minutes basically, right? 15 plus 8 here. So that's a lot of time, isn't it? 22 whole minutes. That's a lot of time to see us make a big move shortly after. So that's where I say you want to have confidence within the process that we teach. I mean, here in Traders Talk, we basically spark noted it just right there, but we take a lot of time throughout our entire curriculum to basically break it down in full, A to Z. So it's all about rebreaks and buying pressure coming in here, the flipping of that into a support. Maybe didn't really have a deep pullback here at this point. Even this breakout over 550, no pullback yet. So, that's something to think about when the time arises. But otherwise, this whole morning, this trade's been phenomenal off of testings of levels and rebreaks of them. At least, it looks like it moved up to 550 right here. Yeah, notice on this candle, this volume bar at 10:24 in the morning. The high, it's at 550. Okay. Did it break over 550? No, the high is 550. So it didn't break over that price. I can't say that there was like buying pressure above 550, mind you. But when you see the high at 550, it means that at least some volume got filled there. At least some, right? There had to have been at least some buying pressure off of 550. Well, look how much buying pressure there was, at least on this one candle. Definitely a lot more up volume than down volume, more buying pressure than selling pressure. So yeah, it didn't break over 550 here, but there could have been a huge iceberg that got filled right off the top. Jump to our good old friend level 4 here to find out. Actually, so much so I don't even have the ticker up. There you go. You want to know how I was focused on SMMT all morning? Well, I wasn't as focused on the others, like real time. I mean, I was, but not as much. So let's see. It was off 550. So I just want to go back to see where that order was and how big it was, if anything. Ooh, okay, this makes it all the more interesting. So there really isn't like a dark, deep red line that denotes resistance here that acts as like a massive sell order. There's some here, but it's not much. Not like a 150,000 share order out there. It's like 23,000. This, though, is a market order that got filled, a market print, 154,000 shares that got filled at 548. And then later on, just point being is that there's actually a number of these larger green dots that come in as it's holding under 550, as it's moving up to 550 here. So it doesn't exactly show an iceberg, but there is a ton of big buying pressure coming in near the top. And by the time it broke over 550 just once here after 11, took off. So, this has been playing nice all throughout the day today. Obviously, the more any stock goes up, it's not going to play as nice consistently. That's where I just got shaken out, even if SMMT is going back up. Same deal here. False breaks over 6, then eventually it made the push. So it eventually made the push. But yeah, you can't keep expecting a stock to just play nice over and over and over. It's going to keep going up and up and up effortlessly. There's going to be points of stalling out. There's going to be profit taking. There's going to be just obviously a top. To every roller coaster, there's a top. So you just don't want to be on the way down. I know some people like roller coasters, like actual ones. I hate them. I got a thing for heights. I don't really do that. So I know some people like the drop on the roller coasters. Yeah, You don't want to be a part of the drop on the roller coaster here in the stock market. So, it's okay to get taken out on trades, but you want to be very selective with your entry here. Even this right now, if I were to try and jump back in on this trade, I have no reason to just yet. I need to have more confirmation behind a level holding. So maybe 20 bucks if it were to come back down there. Maybe if there's something new popping up on level 4. But I don't have as much conviction to just jump in, right? All right, 20 bucks. Big level here, right? Some good buying. So if that can continue to hold as a support, if there's another little dip, that could set me up. But otherwise, at this time of the day, and especially after a stock already ran and ran and ran, you gotta be more diligent waiting for those rebreaks in a smaller concentration. You're still gonna likely get stuck in a head fake or like a little rut where it pops and drops, right place, wrong time. But that's where I say you definitely want to wait the first test here at first. And the more times it could nip it in a smaller area, you do become more bullish. So, hey, we're human beings. We're not going to be able to capture those moments perfectly all the time, every time. But at least we avoid losing trades by being more patient, right? All right, really quick, folks. If you have any questions on APLD or the summit, let me know. Those were the two I wanted to start with. Obviously, Palantir, we did call it. We basically called it. I was insinuating by later in September that we would likely see it happen. I didn't really know when, but it happened sooner than I thought it would even. So on Friday, we saw a huge pop in PLTR at like 5 o'clock, 5:15, and news came out that they had joined the S&P 500. All right. So this is huge news, and we'll show you how to trade a stock when they, have a news announcement like this that they're going to be joining the S&P 500 eventually. I think their listing date on there is like September 23rd, but the news came out on Friday, so it led to a nice pop overnight. You'd figure that they would move up. Here's the thing, though. Not all companies make a direct run up immediately after joining the S&P 500. Sometimes it could be buy the rumor, sell the news. Sometimes it could just be a sell the news event anyway, like a little head fake and then it tanks. That's happened before to several stocks, whether it's on the Nasdaq 100 or S&P 500 here. I've just seen it. I've traded it where I've been wrong. So over my years, I've learned where, okay, don't just jump in, just like we talked about. It's a matter of marking out your levels. It's a matter of marking out your levels. So again, for something like this, I'd just be more inclined to focus on the whole number of prices. And we'll just even do 33 for right now because this was as easy on the eyes as anything, right? Held under 33 going into the end of Friday, pre-market, all throughout holding under 33, holding under it, dropping from it there. So you know where your resistance is. And again, I asked you earlier, so you know at this point, but that's where I say one of the first steps in the process is looking to know where those iceberg orders are and where they likely are going to be. So for a trade like this, 50-cent levels, right? I'm sorry, blah, blah. Retract that. Retract that. Delete that from your mind. Let me repeat what I just said there, but better. For a more expensive stock like Palantir, dollar levels, $1 levels at APLD, and my head's still there as I said that. So $1 levels for a stock like PLTR. 33, you would assume to be a level just because of that. Well, look at it holding so nicely on the chart. You know that's the level from the chart. Let's take a look on level 4, right over here. Oh, I can't. I got to do this first. Working remotely here, so I'm actually tapping into my Florida computer as I'm teaching this workshop here, but a little tough to manipulate. So you can see about 42,000 shares on the offer at 33. That was there just going into the open. There was a similar order here earlier in pre-market. It got pulled, but you know where that level is. Now, what happens here once the market did open? Did this pop like right in the first few minutes? I got to zoom in here like a little manually. Give me a sec. Yeah, right. Like before the 5-minute marker at 9:32, 9:33, it ended up making that pop. So that would be the tough part, right? Because even me, like out of 100 trades, How many of those first trades that I take are within the first 5 minutes of the market open? Probably like one or two out of 100. So would this be one of those like rule breakers here where, you jump in? If you have that much confidence, then yes. If you have, absurd supreme confidence that this can make at least a 50-cent move, and then otherwise, if it pops and you jump in and you set your stop, and then you're wrong and you go break even, okay, then who cares? Right? So if you're accepting of those consequences and you're, absurdly confident about the run, then you know what? Let that be the one or one of two out of 100 that you kind of break that 5 minute rule on. So if you're asking me would I have done that, I can't give you a real answer because I just didn't take this trade and I was more focused on Summit myself. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to give you a fugazi answer here. So, if I was watching PLTR and that was it, and not Summit, and I was like, this is the one, maybe, maybe not. I mean, definitely 33 is a strong level. And you know me, like, this is one of my favorite stocks. So I'd have an increased sense of confidence compared to, someone that may not be as fond of this company and may not trade it weekly or monthly or even daily or whatever the, case may be. So if you're more familiar with the company, you I would certainly hope that you have more confidence trading that, right? If you don't have an increased sense of confidence in trading a company you're more familiar with, then I'd say you probably shouldn't be watching that stock. It means you're probably not familiar with it. So that's where, of course, we want to go through that throughout our entire curriculum. But again, I'm speaking more to Kathleen and Chuck and Chris and Brad and Barbara and Leda and Grant and Michael and Steve and a lot of our longtime C2 students that have been with us for like just over a year. Right. If you're with us for over a year, I consider you a longtime C2 student. So we have plenty of those with us joining us every day. And they know this, right? So if you were that confident, you could take the trade. If you waited the first 5 minutes, okay, where's our next level? Normally, I would assume for it to be 34 every dollar. Every dollar. Normally, I would. On this trade, there actually seems to be an iceberg order at 33.55. So random price, it's not like every 50 cents, it's still every dollar. But I'd say uniquely at this price, 33.55, there seems to be an iceberg there. So, you know what? If it could smash over this once, twice, and that's all within just a 1 or 2 minute time frame here, actually like 30 seconds, I think even. So this makes a very quick move. Does it flip that into support after? Well, it runs off of it at first, makes a nice run to begin, but it doesn't hold over it nicely. It does kind of crash into it, breaks under that for a little bit. It does go down, right? It drops all the way down as low as like 33.20 ish. Maybe there could have been a historical level from the daily chart. We did not check that. We did not go that far here. But more or less, what happens is this essentially catches back up with the VWAP, holds it as resistance here, breaks back over it here, and then does its job. So if you were looking for the VWAP to be that support level, that would have been a great entry. Otherwise, though, same deal here. The more buying that you have at the 33.55 here, again, I wouldn't have thought for that to be a price level going into the day, unless if it was like distinctly showing. Not really. It was just 33, then 34, and then after that, 35. So every dollar. So, that popped up out of the blue. Popped up out of the blue. So what do we do with that? Well, hey, the more buying that we see off of this price, whether it's here, this would have been a great entry in hindsight because it got you 50 cents or so, got you, that level to level play. But even if you're looking for this to become support later on, it doesn't do it so fast as you would want, but it does it. You can't say it doesn't do it. It does it. Like right here, it breaks back over 33.55. It holds right over 33.55, I think even. Notice it doesn't even touch 50. Watch this. This would be funny. Make my point even better if it doesn't touch 50. 33.55 was the real iceberg level there, right? So does it touch 50? I don't think it does, but it, goes under and over 55 a couple times, gives you that entry under and over, under and over. So really that became a strong level. It was a good level and it became a better level here afterwards and smooth sailing. Moved up, became support again, cleaner this time where it did break under it, but better movement back over. Multiple entries off of this iceberg. So, hey, once the market opens up, you should have a pretty good sense from pre-market, but there could be new levels that pop up after. This was a level that became very relevant over time. Now, at this point, obviously on Palantir, we're getting the break over 34. The more times it nips it, nips it, nips it, nips it, especially looking at the CVP column now at this point, it obviously got pretty inflated off 34. I'd call this a very top heavy trade looking at this from pre market going into the open. Most of the volume is filled off of the top. It's top heavy. So, that's either going to lead to one of two things. That's a big area of volume. It's either going to hold, rightfully so, as resistance, and it will just drop back down. Or if it can break over it, make a clean break over 34, then there's a case for that move up higher to 35, right? And that's where we're at now. That's where we're at currently, basically, on this trade. We're on the way up to 35. All right. So I got to catch up here and refill up my water here, which I ran out of. That's going to stink. But we got a couple more minutes before we finish up anyway. Chuck's saying on DRN, it's a real estate ETF, triple leveraged. He called it out earlier. I remember that. So we'll get to like live stuff in just a bit, Chuck. If there's any questions that you've had on PLTR or the other two stocks that we'd called out, definitely let me know there. I'll take a look at like DRN. I'll take a look at like Dell or other stuff that might be moving live. But if you wanted to know why Palantir made such a good move today, and if you'd missed out on it, if you were wondering like, how could I have jumped? That's what we cover here in Traders Talk. That's more kind of like the focal point that we do here in our workshops. This is going up nicely. It took me out, so a little rude of a shake here. Made a better move up while I'm teaching, but there's still more to take off the bone here on this trade over time, I believe. So I'll try and jump back in later on it. That's fine. All right. So if there's any questions that you have, at least on trades that you took, or any other questions, at least from class from the last week, just let me know right now. From Kathleen here. She had sent this one in actually earlier. I just saw it right now, Kath. I'm sorry. Kathleen asking from before, do you have a plan when your trade hits your sell price, but you don't get filled? Um, Kath, in that case, does the stock drop back down as you're still in it? Or did the stock skip over your sell order and it's moving up higher and you're actually like even in a better position, right? Because it can kind of be one of the other, right? Kathleen asking again, do you have a plan when your trade hits your sell price, but you don't get filled? So that could actually be taken in two separate ways, right? Like what happens, I'll give you the better example because I think Kath might be more asking in like what happens if it is supposed to take you out and it drops and then all of a sudden you're trying to like scramble, right? I feel like that could be the case. In something like that, the first thing that I think of in giving this answer is where are my levels? So Kathleen might have had a target price to sell at, but is the stock still over a pretty strong level that it broke over? And if it's still like kind of like right there, the price that it broke over is still like kind of right below where the stock is trading, well, I'd give it that leverage. I'd give it that cushion room. So, I'd probably want to like see if that could become support. And if it even, holds that and then goes up again, all the better. But, if you don't have that level, then you have to think about a couple of things. This is just, a more perspective based answer that you need to think about. How much are you up or down on the day when this happens? What time of the day is it really when this happens, as well? Is this your first trade of the morning and it's like 9:45 a.m.? Did you make a solid chunk of money already? And, it's maybe like 12 o'clock in the afternoon. You've already, done a bunch of trading already. These things matter. So that's where I'd say, like, depending on where you stand in the day performance wise, what time of the day it may be, how much time you have left to your arsenal, those things are very important with me deciding Do I just yank the trade out and get out at market and just hit the close button? Or do I try and play it still? You could still try and play it, but if you're not up a lot on the day and you're already giving back some of that profit, even though it should have taken you out, if you're not up a certain amount, if you're not up at all, if you're down, you got to be more quick to take the profit, right? So those are the biggest things that I think about ultimately with that answer. And that's for any time that happens for any stock. And if any student asks me that question, they get the same answer basically. So, I just want to point that out because that happens to a lot of us. That will happen to a lot of us, if not all of us, where like we have an order to get out and then the damn thing doesn't take us and like, then, it goes the other way. It's like, okay, that's kind of rude. So, you have to think about how much you're up or down on the day because if you could afford more of a shake on that one trade and you've already made your day's pay, I, you know, I think that we're pretty, what's the phrase, far-sighted, nearsighted, whatever. If we let that one trade damper our whole mindset or whole day, it's like, oh no. It's like, well, no, if you made your day's pay and then like you gave back a little more than you should have, okay. It's like you're still up a lot of money, right? But if you're down on the day and then obviously you're trying to make a comeback, you got to be very quick with getting out and making that judgment call right there, Kathleen. Well, this thing was very rude to me, even though I made money on the trade. I was in from 1929. I got shaken out at 62 or 63. Well, that's pretty rude of a shake because this thing just shook right back up without me, right? Happens. All right, well, how do we readjust? How do we, focus in on that after? It's all going back to your levels. The stock's breaking all-time highs as well. So without there being any historical data to work with, you focus on where the volume is traded at, 20 bucks. Even here, looks like there's a dot. I don't know how big it is. 52,000 shares, 50,000 shares here. I mean, definitely a lot more volume cumulatively filled at 20 and even 1950. So if it pulls back, I'd love to see 20 try and become support. Otherwise, maybe I do wait for 21 to become a stronger level. And hey, maybe I'll take that trade back from there. Maybe that doesn't happen, and maybe I don't have the confidence to trade SMMT later on, and maybe there's a better trade. Maybe Palantir pulls back, and this resistance level that it broke over flips into support. You got to bounce on that. That there's always other stocks too. So if you don't feel as confident or as comfortable on a trade, that's where it's best to just see what else is out there at the time, right? I'll leave off with this actually because we'll finish Traders Talk a little early here today. Got dry mouth here. Got to fill back up on water, be good to go. But I was talking to our students earlier, Lynn and Randy, and they had brought up a sense of consistency, confidence type of quote. We'll just say a comment that related to consistency and confidence. And actually, I didn't say this to them. So there's a line that I remember a little while back from like an athlete, a little while back, just always resonated with me. Um, it's a math formula, right? So this is where we'll leave off. Effort times consistency equals confidence. So if you are consistent, but you don't really put in the effort to study and go back and review your trades and work with, at least the instructors, obviously Fausto, myself, Rich, and be as involved, then you're not going to really progress. You might still be consistent, but you're not going to be progressing consistently. So that's the first thing. You need to have the effort in there. Then, of course, once you do have consistency involved with the effort involved, to begin with, once the seeds are planted and once you start seeing the flowers bloom a bit, you gain the confidence knowing that you're doing the right thing. So effort times consistency equals confidence. That's kind of where we'll leave off there. All right, folks, we do Traders Talk each and every Monday afternoon now. So Monday at 12:05 p.m. Eastern, we're on YouTube, we're on social media each and every Monday afternoon at Cyber Trading U on social. So once again, popping up on the lower left. Hope you had enjoyed. Got to fill up on water here. I've been lacking water for like 20 minutes now. So otherwise, though, we do audio broadcasts in the morning, each and every afternoon as well, hosted inside our live trading room. If you wanted to join us there, just scan that QR code on the top left right there with your phone, with your camera. We look forward to having you there. But for Lynn and Randy, you got Kathleen, Barbara, you got Margaret, you got Grant, Sam, Danny, Gillis, all of us here. Hope you had enjoyed. Again, we'll be back later on today at 2:30 Eastern just for the afternoon meeting. Talk to you then.